Hey guys, so I'm back to show you the second technique that we can use in order to finish the bows, the edges of the raw edges of our bows. If you remember on this one, we reversed it, sewed our seam together, and then we took a pin and we turned it, and I said I thought that was a little bit difficult for some people. So again, here's the second technique that you can use, and it kind of finishes all of your raw edges all at once. So here's I wanted to use a different piece of fabric so you will get a better picture of what I'm doing. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to finish the ends of the bow. So in order to do that, you just take your edge, your raw edge at the end, and turn it up. I'd say that is not even a quarter. Take your iron, and I'm going to try and get the camera a little bit closer for you. Take the iron and just iron it up. Yeah, you can see that, right? Yeah, just iron it up about a little less than a quarter of an inch, okay? And again, we're going to do the same thing for the next end. So you see how it looks once you turned it up that little quarter of an inch. It looks nice, and that raw edge is technically finished, okay? Then you go to the next edge and you turn that one up. I'd say again a little less than, maybe it is about a quarter of an inch, and iron. That's all I'm doing, is I'm just ironing that end, okay? Now we have two ends that no longer have raw edges. So you see, these are our, let me turn it this way. These are our ends. Then what we do is we take, and this part you have to be very careful with, because you get close with the iron in order to do that. But let me show you what we're going to do. You see how we still have this raw edge? We're going to take this whole thing and turn this up about a quarter of an inch. See what I did here? I just took everything from the end and I turned it up a quarter of an inch. And then what we do is we just iron it. So I hope you guys can see me. Now you see what I'm doing? I'm just ironing that whole thing, that raw edge, one side of the raw edge up, so that down. We're ironing it down toward the wrong side of the fabric. I'll get better with my terminology, promise. So we're turning it down a quarter of an inch on one side of our bow. Then we're just gonna flip it. See how we turned that down? Wrong. Look, I'll show you. Wrong side of fabric. Turn that down so that it's touching the wrong side of the fabric. Then we still have this one end to do, starting at the very end, and we are going to turn that over about a quarter of an inch. And it's okay if the other side is coming up a little, because just think we only ironed it. So I'll show you how we're gonna just use that iron mark as a guide, because with this one we're not going to use a safety pin. This is easier to some. My preference now that I'm doing this, I think it may be the safety pin. It just seems a little bit easier, but you choose whichever technique you enjoy. So as you can see, that came up a little bit the other side, so I just go over it again. Try not to touch the side I just ironed. That's why it came up. So now we have both of these turned up, down to the wrong side of the fabric, and all we do is take this like so, and we fold it in half. Let me see if I could take the two ends, and we fold it in half. See what I did? See, I folded it in half. And then once you fold it in half, go all the way down and fold it in half, and then just iron it. So I'm going to go back to the ironing board and start here, and I'm just going to fold those two edges that we just folded down. I'm going to make them meet. Can you see what I'm doing? See how they meet? I folded it in half, and then once we make these meet, it's actually going to be one finished bow. It's going to have no raw edges at all. And I'll show you why. And I keep ironing because sometimes it just takes a little time to get that good crease we want to really make it stay. And then now you can see this should be one straight piece. See? And it's okay to keep tucking it in. This was our end that we ironed in. Then we ironed in a 1/4 inch on each side. And here's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like. And then this is what I did after I finished that. Same process, same technique. I just pinned it. So now that you have that, you're just going to pin all the way across. This is just going to keep it in place for you because now we're going to make a straight stitch. And if you give me 1 minute, I'll be right back to show you what it'll look like. Okay, guys. So you remember we ended up with this. We ended up with this piece after we turned in our edges on the ends and on this end, and then we just flipped it in half so that we had it folded in half, okay? And then we just pinned it. Then I went to the machine and I used the opposite one so you would see what it should look like. And here's your finished bow. See what I did? You guys can see the stitch. I went all the way from the tip where we had this folded in, right here. We had that part folded under, right in here. Remember, we folded our ends in this way. Then we folded everything in half after we turned everything under 1/4 inch. And I just went to my machine and I stitched it at the edge, a straight stitch all the way across. And then remember what I showed you guys in the other my other video. I said, you know, don't cut your thread because we'll reinforce our ends here, okay? So as you can see, I have 2 threads here. Let me see if I can get, yeah, so 2 threads. And I am just going to make the knots like we did before so that we can make sure, or at least try and attempt to make sure that the stitch doesn't come out, okay? Because when you're working with ends like this, it's just really hard to reverse on your sewing machine. Other people have other ways of doing it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll serge, and you're not incorrect if you took your machine and just serged this together. It's fine. You know, it's your preference. So then I have an extra string here because I had to do a reverse stitch. So here again, the other edge, separate it so that you have 2 strings, and you just tie it. Again, you want to tie it twice, you want to tie it 3 times, whatever you think will make you feel comfortable that your fabric or your stitch will not come out, okay? And then what we do is we take this thread and we just cut it, not to where our knot is, just cut it. Again, see, cut it. Now you remember in the video where I showed you how we stuck a pin in, we turned it over, and then we had raw edges that we still had to get to. You notice anything? This technique, your raw edges are done. You do not have to do anything else, and they won't come out because they're part of this stitch right here. They're part of that stitch we ran across. You understand what I'm saying? So before we had to finish these raw edges after we tucked the pin in, and remember we tucked it in to finish it and then made a stitch, you don't have to do that. So that's the only difference here. And then again, you just take your pencil and you tie it in a knot, like it, well, make it even. I mean, that's what I try and do. I turn it over the pencil. I just try and show you guys the right way. I just make this even over the pencil. Try and keep it together. Let me move over. Try and keep it together and just make a knot. Just like if you were making a knot in a little kid's shoe or whatever, or your shoe for that matter, make a tight knot. And then all you do is slip it off. This is your bow. Slip it off. And then, oh, I showed you a different way, but I'm going to cheat this time. So we should have made the bow on there, but technically you can do it this way. You just wrap it around and just pretend you're making a bow in your kid's shoe. You are making a bow in your little child's shoe, and watch what happens. Here we go. Actually, look guys, that looked better than the other technique I showed you. Remember, you can make the bow while it's still on the pencil, but look, you see, that's what I said about sewing. Sometimes it's whatever works for you. So now I actually showed you two techniques. I showed you the technique where you can make the bow while it's still on the pencil, and this time I inadvertently forgot that I shouldn't have taken the pencil off. But again, all you're doing is making a bow. You've tied little kids' shoes, you've tied your shoes, make a bow. That's how I make mine, and then you just play with it. You just straighten it out until it looks like a bow that you would be happy with. Please take the time, guys, to visit my website, Busta Wraps, BUSTAWRAPPS. I am going to go to my sewing machine, make a few more bows, then I'm going to come back and show you guys how I hand stitch my bows, or anything for that matter, to another piece of fabric. So go finish your bows, practice it. No one is perfect. Is sometimes sewing is just trial and error. Some of you guys may get it better than I do, but whatever technique you use, just make sure it's a technique that makes you comfortable, because that's all that matters when you sew, is what the technique that you use, as long as you're comfortable. So go make the rest of your bows, however many you think you may want to make. And in my next video, I'm going to, I'll probably sew one on to show you where I put it, and then I'll show you how I sewed it on. So until my next video, guys, have a good day. Bye-bye.